Good morning and welcome back to the VIP seat. Your co-hosts are here, Jesse Neor and Preston Holland, as usual. Sit back, buckle up, and let's take off. All right, Preston. Well, we have a little bit of a different show today. It's our last show of the year of the season, so we're trying to make this a little interesting and different than usual.
Yeah, Jesse and I were trying to figure out what news has happened in the last couple of weeks with Christmas and everything, and there's nothing. So we decided that we were going to switch it up a little bit this week, and we are going to do top trends from 2025, biggest winners, biggest losers, and predictions for 2026. So it should be a lot of fun. We've got some interesting trends, and I don't know. We'll see if everybody agrees with us. That's going to be the real thing. So in social media, in the comment sections, make sure that you let us know, like, you agree or you disagree with who our biggest winners and losers, what our big trends are. So let's jump right into it. Major trends from 2025. So this is things that we saw across all of the stories that we covered here on the VIP seat. It's things that it's cocktail conversations. It's things that we've heard behind the scenes. So the biggest trend for 2025, Jesse, let's hear yours.
All right. So my top trend for the year, of course, the safety girl is going to have something to say about what's going on at the FAA. We had a new Congress. We had the tragic accident at DCA. And I think that's brought a lot of needed scrutiny and focus on the FAA. So for one, Congress passed this huge bill to start, regenerating the ATC system. They're working on ways to hire new air traffic controllers. So I think it's a big year for the FAA, transformative, and we'll have to see what the next couple years bring.
Yeah, I think that there's a lot of infrastructure as well in that trend, right? You look at the ATC modernization and the infrastructure. You look at remind me what the thing is called, the soft concrete at the end of the runway that stops you from running off of it.
The EMAS.
EMAS, that's right. So EMAS is being installed. So that's a big infrastructure trend. So I'd say that that's a big deal. So there's a couple of different, I think that is really a trend, right? It's kind of, there's all of these different things that are happening that haven't happened over the last, 10 to 15 years, right? So it's been a long time since there's really been any sort of major investment. Most of our airport infrastructure is from kind of post-World War II / 50s, 60s era infrastructure investments. So it's about time that we started getting some investments here, and it's good to see kind of that trend.
Yeah. And I mean, there's, new runway safety things that are coming into play. That's been a problem over the last couple of years, runway incursions, and there's some pretty good technology out there to stop it from happening. So we saw that in a lot of our stories this year. Also, pilot mental health. Finally, changes are coming. They've already made changes to the time that you have to wait. It used to be 6 months to normalize on a new medication. Now it's 3 months. So good things are happening. I'm happy to see it, and I hope it continues through the rest of the next couple of years, because we have political changes happening in Congress, which always affects FAA and kind of creates chaos. So maybe part of the reason we've seen some movement this year is because there's been a united front on who's in charge. But I hope that continues. I'm not saying I care who's in office, but I just hope the unity continues.
I hope that it's not a hill worth dying on politically. I feel like, it's kind of already gotten in motion, and government in some way, shape, or form is a perpetual motion machine. And I think that the FAA is one of those parts of the government that is a perpetual motion machine, where once it starts moving, it's really hard to stop it, which is sometimes good, sometimes bad, right? You see it with kind of runaway funding. You see it with, over regulatory burden and things like that. But I think for the safety at the FAA, I hope that no one's going to win any political points going, hey, we're going to nuke the pilot mental health stuff, right? That's probably not going to be very popular.
It shouldn't be partisan. FAA shouldn't be partisan. Sometimes it gets caught in the crossfire, but I think hopefully everyone sees, after the DCA crash and other things this year that, let's all come together on this one.
Yep, exactly. So, well, that's a great major trend. My major trend for the year is just kind of big dollar amounts. So, if you look at M&A transactions, you look at fundraising, you look at kind of a general trend across the industry, is it's the big guys who have won and who have transacted and raised money. And then on the flip side, right, I can only count on like one hand the amount of small business M&A, like that's kind of medium business buying small business, right? You had the Van Allen transaction, you had the Leviate transaction, you had a couple
Priester.
of the FBOs, the Priester, right? Outside of that, there's not been a lot of lower middle market transaction activity. It's been the big dogs, right? You have Bond raising hundreds of millions of dollars. You have Flyhouse raising, I have no idea. I don't think they've ever talked about it publicly, but it's
No.
got to be so much money that, you don't even know that you don't know what to do with. You have Wheels Up doing the sale leaseback last week. That's a little bit of current news. So like the big players are able to do financing activities,
Mm-hmm.
and it kind of leaves the small players in a bit of a tight spot and hopefully ripe for gobbling up, but we haven't seen that, right? You saw Flyhouse bought up Sun Air Jets last week, and so that was kind of a small company being bought up by someone who's got major funding. Kind of reminds me of a lot of the Wheels Up transactions. Just gonna draw another parallel there. Not saying that there's 100% parallel because Flyhouse does not have its own fleet, but there are a lot of things, right? Mountain Air, this kind of feels a little bit Mountain Airy,
Mm-hmm.
from that. Kind of pulling back, right, is the big dollar amounts that win. And that part's, it's interesting because it makes it hard for kind of the rest of the, I don't know, smaller players in the industry to like get noticed.
Yeah. Well, my take on this is there's been a lot of dry powder for the last couple of years. For those who are not like in the finance world, essentially like all the private equity, the private financial markets, they've been sitting on investment money for a long time. They've been looking for opportunities, but the markets have been kind of weird. Say like economically, we've all felt kind of in a weird funk the last like year or two. So I think they've been desperate to deploy capital, but I don't think that they are so desperate that they're going after kind of the smaller companies at this point. They're still looking for the big players. I gotta say, I bet you some of this money is very, very expensive. Like Wheels Up news this week is they just did a lease back of some of their fleet. Leasing is incredibly expensive. So no idea what they paid for that money, but I guess they needed it because they got a delisting notice a couple days before.
Yeah, I mean, like the IRR on leasing is usually like 18 to 24%. So you calculate based off lease rate factor, super duper expensive. But I guess good for the fleets. Like I'm working on a fleet deal right now, similar-ish structure, right? And it's useful because, hey, we can point to, hey, well, Wheels Up did it. So,
Mm-hmm.
it's obvious that people are doing this in this industry. So like it might help capital. I don't know. I also think that like the family market money is not running super strong. I just don't see it very often. And maybe it's the world in which I live and the circles in which I run. So I fully recognize that could be just me. But I feel like 2 or 3 years ago, I had family offices reaching out to me like, hey, we want to invest in this aviation company. We want to invest in this software, all of that kind of stuff. I'm not seeing as much of that. There's really not a lot of seed capital either, right? So like
Mm-hmm.
small, tiny capital. So I don't know. That's my major trend for 2025
Yeah.
is big dollar amounts.
Yeah.
So, but that takes us to everybody's favorite section of the show. And today, the song Baby It's Cold Outside, and it's like it's incredibly politically incorrect. I did see a politically correct version of Baby It's Cold Outside. Look it up on Instagram. It's hysterical. But it's cold outside and
Mm-hmm.
everybody's kind of cooped up and there's not a lot of news happening. So we've got a lot of keyboard warriors out there. So Jesse and I both have some spicy
Real
LinkedIn
spicy.
drama. So Jesse, I want to see yours first because you were telling me about this before the show and I was like, oh man, they just walked into this one.
Yeah. So, I mean, this guy, I feel like we have gotten into it online before. For anyone who's following me on LinkedIn, I don't I don't hold back with my opinions. I guess I don't on the show either. But this guy, Jim Atkinson, he's a 121 pilot. He posted a Vanity Fair article, which to be fair was like a year old. So it's not even like new news, but he posted this and said, secrets out, 135 flying as the rich person's Uber. Here we go, class warfare.
Here we go.
Is wildly less safe than fastening your seatbelt on a scheduled airline flight. And this is just patently false. And most of the industry started going in on him. Nathan Winkle, said this is the single most uninformed, misleading post and article that's ever been posted on LinkedIn, which I don't disagree with. Eric Knupp.
Nathan does not mince words. We need to make a goal for 2026 to have Nathan on the podcast.
Yeah, we do. Nathan, he was on here like years ago, year and a half ago. He was one of our original. But yeah, I mean, John King everyone's chiming in on this post because it's so misinformed. And I got into it with him. And for those who are interested, we'll post it in the link. But, first of all, owner flying is totally different than 135. And that was one of the references in this article was an owner pilot that got into an accident. Statistically, like not even relevant, not even related to 135 in any way. But also, as a former operator who hired hundreds and hundreds of pilots, I can tell you there's just a total difference in the airline pilot and the corporate pilot. I don't think you can say one or the other is safer than the other. I think it's a totally different type of flying. It requires a different approach mentally, from a training perspective, from who you are. But, he went on there and was just saying horrible things about 135 pilots, like they're the dregs of commercial flying, which is absolute BS, not true. Man, it is spicy, but I think I represented our industry well there.
Yeah, it's interesting, like the fact that 135 gets lumped in with like steerman flying. Like if you want to throw the whole statistics together, you could put, seaplanes and charter birds together, dual piloted crews, recurrent training,
and cargo carriers. I mean, they're all in 135.
Right, exactly. Yeah, and cargo carriers going in there where it's like single engine versus multi-engine. I get this question a lot, like on Twitter. Like you literally got it last week. And he was like, how statistically unsafe is it to fly private? And I was like, I mean, not really. It's more dangerous statistically driving to the airport than it is to get on a 135. And they say the same thing about commercial, and then it is true. But it's also true about 135. Like statistically speaking, you have a very, very, very low likely chance of accident with dual pilot, professional crew, part 135, everything up to snuff. I'm not going to say you're exactly the same, but it's pretty close to flying commercial.
You have to keep slicing away. And this is the problem. And I have a lot of this data on flyingprivate.org. It's less statistically relevant because we have such a small industry and you keep slicing into, okay, we have to separate out, the Cessna 172 that happens to have a charter certificate from the Falcon 2000 that has 2 flight crews. And the more you slice it down, the safer and safer you get with certain variables, but it's hard to just make a generalization about 135 because there's so many types of it. But it's total BS. And if you have a question about your operator, you can go to the site, you can look up their accident records and their compliance records, and you can know for yourself whether they're safe or not.
Yeah, I will say, just to plug Jesse's stuff, I use Flying Private all the time to look up operators. I have people reach out and they're like, hey, I'm flying with this operator, I'm not sure. And there are services out there that will go nameless that people use and they're great, but there is a commercial piece to it. And that's been the number one complaint from everybody. Jesse's is just conglomerated data from the FAA.
And it's free.
It's free. It's all free. It's all free data. You can go look up your tail number. You can see if they have an accident history. You can go see what the accident was, right? Somebody hits a deer on the runway, right? That's a bummer. Still, it's going to get an FA, it's going to get an incident accident situation. But I don't think you can really control that. But if they have a runway incursion at night and it's wet and you're maybe that was a bad decision.
It's a DIY website. You can make your own informed choice based on what's there. It's just the data. So thanks for the plug.
Exactly. So flyingprivate.org, go check it out. Well, mine is also a spicy LinkedIn post. And I will say I saw this post and I got a text message asking if I had read the comments in this post because it gets crazier. I was scrolling through, I saw it. I was like, oh yeah. So David Gitman, president of Monarch Air Group, posted, and it's pretty, he stays pretty PG about it, right? Like he's not attacking anybody. An arrest warrant was issued for Jordan Brown. For those who haven't followed Jordan Brown, we talked about it on the show 6 months ago, probably, when he and Doug Golan got into a fight via text message and Doug published it. He has a lot of legal troubles. He has a FET issue outstanding where he didn't pay FET. He has a lot of operators that he's on a blacklist with because he owes them money, right? There's just a lot of smoke that comes around Jordan Brown. And David Gitman posts this: an arrest warrant was issued for Jordan Brown on November 25th. The Palm Beach County Court issued an order of contempt and writ of bodily attachment, which basically means he didn't show up to jail, or he didn't show up to court. So now the police can take him in. What do you think? Is this a sad day or a good day for our private aviation community? I'm sorry, but saying sad day or good day is funny.
Look, I just have to say I've never done business with Jordan, so I can't say one way or the other. These are all allegations. Nothing is proven until the court of law. But I felt a little bad for the guy because he's getting called out publicly. Maybe it's for a reason. I don't know. I really can't. I can't speculate. It's definitely fun to read.
Yeah, I think
as an outsider.
I think the reality is everybody likes to have a villain, and Jordan's a pretty easy villain in this industry. I have met Jordan a couple of times, and I've never gotten how you talk to somebody and you're like, yeah, this guy probably not so good. Jordan does not give me the evil vibes.
Mm-hmm.
I think what happened was he got out over his skis, and then it all started compounding. And then when your reputation gets questioned, you start punching, and I get it. But he has a reputation on social media, and I mean, as we saw in the text message story a couple months ago, to be a little spicy. So some of these, I just want to point out some of these comments. They must not be looking very hard, at least not looking in the storefront on Fifth Avenue in Naples. That's from Michael Farley from Outlier Jets. I guess that's his office. Jordan actually gets on in comments, which I was like, aren't you trying to avoid getting arrested? It is a great day in private aviation. Debts are being paid. I made a decision not to reschedule my family Thanksgiving time that week to attend court for a debt I intend to pay anyways. Which, again, Jordan, I probably would have worded that a little differently.
There are things you can miss family time for, and I think usually court is one of them.
I think court counts.
Sorry. But hey, I like that. You know what? He's punching back though.
Yeah,
be out there and control the PR. Yeah.
Yeah, he reminds me of John Matthews, right? John Matthews would do the same thing. Rest in peace, John Matthews. LinkedIn. He's not dead, but his LinkedIn got banned. Anyways, he's getting into the comments. He and David are kind of talking. This Michaela Bryan chick chimes in and basically is like, I worked for Jordan. He's terrible. Craig Pickens, side face. Jesse in there with the yikes.
Popcorn.
David Posey, not surprising, popcorn. A lot of popcorn. Glad this is happening.
Definitely worth the look. We will post link in the comments for your enjoyment.
It's tough. It's a tough look. I will say this. Do business crappily. That's my number one rule. Don't be a crappy person, and just be a good person. And none of this kind of stuff happens to you.
What an age we're living in, though, where all this stuff plays out in this public forum. This all used to be kind of secret conversations at trade shows, and now it's just no, we're out here having the conversation together, like it or lump it. So
yep, and here we are, the new media, if you will, talking about it, which is crazy. So anywho, we will link both LinkedIn stories on the newsletter, thevipseat.com. And that's where you can sign up for the newsletter. We send that once a week. Typically, we do the top 5 stories in business aviation, but this week we are doing things a little bit differently. Today's episode of the VIP Seat is sponsored by RealJet. RealJet is built for travelers who want reliability, access, and a real human being on the other end of the phone. Someone who knows you, your preference, your routines, your styles. With RealJet, you get decades of industry experience, 24/7 access to more than 1,500 premium aircraft, and a flexible, commitment-free booking model. No memberships, no long-term contracts, just a team that anticipates your needs and makes every detail feel effortless, the way private flying should be. With RealJet, you get the difference from the moment you book. Real people, real trust, RealJet. So with that, Jesse, we should jump into our next section, which is the biggest winner for 2025. So this is who had, if it might be a person, it might be a sector of the industry, it might be a company, who was the biggest winner of 2025?
Yeah. So for mine, and this is probably more of your domain, Preston, anyway, but I think aircraft sales, bonus depreciation is back. This was the most psychotic market into the, like, it felt, my husband does aircraft deals and brokerage, so I'm slightly involved just from a distance, but it just felt like this was the craziest end of year we've seen in many years.
Yeah.
Totally nuts, which is great, for new aircraft sales and used aircraft. Well, it's not even new aircraft sales because the books are like so far booked out. It's just the used market is going crazy. Not everywhere, not every single type, but in some specifically, it's just nuts.
Yeah. I think just a couple of like highlights. Our firm, we closed 8 transactions in December. Very exciting.
Yeah.
A couple of 2-in-1 days. So Monday this week, we had 2 closings on Monday and then a couple last week as well. I think it was interesting because in November, I started kind of taking a pulse check on a lot of my kind of industry peers. And it seemed like across the board, like I had one friend, he'll remain nameless, but he said, I am either going to do $200,000 in commission sales or 2.5 million. And I have no idea which one it's going to be. Because he said, he said both are equally likely to happen. And I think that was the general consensus in the industry. Call it end of October, early November, was like, it's been good, not great. Like it's been fine. It's been better, than it has been. But it wasn't this mad dash like everybody expected it to be when bonus depreciation passed until like the second week of December. And then it was bonkers. I mean, I'm talking, I had a transaction close on a PC-12 with financing. We met on a Friday and 15 real days later we were closing. And in that time period, I had probably 10 people reach out saying, hey, I need financing by the end of the year. And I just had to say, sorry, like it's just not going to happen. And I think that's an interesting dynamic that we had this year. It was like almost like a false start. And then it was just a mad dash right at the very end. Like I knew there's a global 6,000 that just like went under contract. I know of like yesterday afternoon is supposed to close today. Right. Like that's just crazy. Like that's bonkers.
Yeah. Well, and to all the spouses and kids that missed their family members for the holiday season, I could tell you it's kind of justified. Like it was just totally nuts. Forgive them. They had no control over the situation. And also just all the inspectors, the maintenance shops, like everybody that I've heard was just hustling and trying to get it done. I'm sure there are probably some closings that are happening, that don't have all the check boxes on them just to get them done.
But, a lot of holdbacks.
Yeah.
A lot of holdbacks.
Yeah.
From what I'm hearing.
But yeah.
And it was like every pre-buy inspection facility was like sending out blasts. And in November, like we have capacity, like we've got 2 slots, like we'd love to have you, which is not typical. Like last year, that was not the case. It was like end of November, everybody's full. And this year, everybody's like, yeah, we'd love to have you. And then it just, it was crazy. No, that's a really good one. Great one, Jesse. My biggest winner for 2025 is fractional providers. I think a couple of major like through line trends that make me say fractional providers. One is you have Bond, who's now entering the market as a new fractional provider. You have AirShare, who transacted at the end of last year and then has been fueling growth. I mean, they were the lead sponsor at the Ryder Cup this year and at the US Open. That's pretty crazy that, they obviously have funding for growth. You have FlexJet making big splashes with the Honeywell situation. So they're winning there, right? That was announced this week. So that's a win. You have the CSX story, more corporate flight departments going fractional. That's a win. You have their order books growing, also a win. And if you look historically, and I've said this a few times, but I wrote about this and I found it very interesting. It's funny when I write newsletters, like it's mostly because I'm curious about it and you're getting to see my discovery in real time as I write it, which is why I get so excited about writing it. Cause I talk about things that I I'm thinking about. And fractional is the only sector that is historic, like through the post-COVID kind of pullback, fractional has just continued on its growth trajectory and arguably turned up instead of down. So there is a fleet of fractional. So I would say fractional operators are the big winner of 2025.
Yeah, I mean, if you have the capital, it's kind of the path of least resistance for aircraft operations. So it's the path of least resistance, to have someone else finance the aircraft, you just operate it and charge extra money on top of operating it, on top of what you charge for doing the deal in the first place. It's the lowest cost of capital. It's the most efficient use of capital in aircraft operations. The problem is, you have to have really deep pockets or great experience to get financing to build models like that. That's the challenge. But I think, there's some small ones too out there, smaller ones, 10 to 20 fleet operators that are doing fractional that also seem to be doing really well. So if you can do it that way, great. And I think everybody else is kind of getting squeezed from a pricing perspective. We've got some comments on that later. But yeah, fractional's killing it, and they've been killing it for years.
Yeah, the interesting thing about the capital piece, right, is, and I hate to re-echo my first point for the major trend for 2025, but I'm gonna jump back in really quick. Like, I'll give you some examples of smaller fleets who have been able to grow without major institutional capital. You have Jet Out, they're out of Milwaukee. They keep expanding. They just opened a new base in Dallas, a new one in Arizona, a new one in South Florida. They are growing organically, but I think that they are probably hitting the need to start thinking about institutional capital level because, they keep expanding, they keep putting in these orders, but they've actually grown, kind of organically. So you have Bond who goes out and just raises a giant pile of money, a huge pile of money to go buy immediately. We're going to buy 40 aircraft, right? We're just going to go ahead and start out as a big player. You have AirShare, who is now national, but if you look at their roots, they started as an air taxi service for like Dallas and Kansas City. That was it. Like, they were very regional. I knew a lot of clients that live in Fort Worth, and they're all like, yeah, we just fly the air taxi to Midland and Houston and whatever. And they organically grew to become a national player, conservative growth, not super levered. They're levered, but they're not like, under this mountain of debt. You look out west, there's a couple of other ones, right? There's Plain Sense, they're national now as well, but they kind of started out regional. So, but I think that the big problem is that you have to have discipline to grow, and you have to say no to a lot of customers if you're going to grow like that. If you're going to grow organically, you have to say no, and you can't raise all this big capital, because I think when you do, and the landscape and the interest rate situation shifts underneath you, it can be crumbling. And so I think that's an interesting piece behind those fractional providers, is the big dogs have definitely won, and the smaller ones have to stay disciplined.
Yeah, no, I will tell you, it's very tempting, especially as you become a fleet operator. All the OEMs are going to come at you with all these like fleet deals, like, hey, you want to get into like this super mid instead of your light jets? And it's hard to say no sometimes, but the cost efficiencies of operating single fleets, you got to be tough on that one.
Yeah, no kidding. Let's move to biggest losers. So Jesse, biggest loser for 2025. Who's the?
Yeah. All right, I'm not going to name names, but
please name names. That's what makes this show great.
I think it's implied. Okay, so I think OEMs this year in general have become the biggest losers of the industry. And, maybe not from a financial perspective, but from like a PR perspective, something has shifted. And I think it started with Ken Rickey at CGI Miami last year, because he started calling out the engine programs because he was getting, he was ramping up his lawsuit against Honeywell, not naming Honeywell specifically, but they get their problems. But yeah, it seems like it used to be taboo to call out your OEM, to get mad at them. I mean, remember you have
the Jet guy. I was about to say Glenn at Jet went after Honda Jet, and that was the beginning of the end for him.
Yeah, and that was taboo, and he got he was under a lot of fire for doing that. Like, whoa, don't go after your OEM. But it seems like, the tide has kind of shifted. It's like they're not giving us what we need. We need to call them out. But I think it was a Ken thing. I think he really kicked off like, oh, this is legitimate to have a bit of a public foray with the OEM that's not providing you the services that they said they would, it makes me wonder, did we not give Glenn enough credit for what was going on with Honda at the time or not? I don't know. It's a different time now, for sure.
Yeah, I think it is super interesting. And I think that I think you have other ones too. Everybody has a problem with their OEM, whatever the OEM is, right? Whether it's engine program, everybody has problems with their aircraft manufacturer, with their engine provider, if it's different than their programs, right? Everybody's got squawks. I just think it's interesting now how I think Ken really has empowered people to go public with those complaints. Mm-hmm. And I think listening to that conversation in context, the CJI Miami conversation about engine programs, in the context in which we know now, mm-hmm. is incredibly interesting, because you can hear a lot of the things where Ken is basically publicly shooting across the bow at Honeywell saying, here's what I want, here's what you need to do. And I'm going to go ahead and say this publicly. And then they spent 12 more years basically lawyering FlexJet and saying, we're not doing this. And now he's come public and said, look, okay, fine. We're not going to settle with you. The gloves are off. We're not going to be nice anymore. And I think Ken has such a really good relationship with his aircraft OEMs as well. Ken is really, really close with the Embraer guys. And I think that that relationship is helping allow him to do this, because they may even be letting him do it as a proxy. And so I think I think that's an interesting take on the OEMs though.
Yeah, I think we'll see more as the years go by. But yeah, it's like where's the balance between, kind of public grievances versus private grievances? Probably depends a lot on the relationships and what respect you're getting from the OEM. But I think we're going to see more of that into next year, because it's kind of becoming more of a norm than it used to be.
Yeah, I mean, Glenn was the largest Honda jet operator in the US, mm-hmm. and he did not have enough sway to be able to overcome that.
Yeah.
I don't know. That'll be interesting. My biggest loser for 2025, and this is going to sound a little harsh, but I don't mean it. I mean that they are the loser with a lot of things outside of their control. Okay. So my biggest loser for 2025 is charter companies. And here's why they're the biggest loser, is there is a lot of external pressure on charter companies. And this is a multi-year trend that I think is coming to a head in 2025. But I think that traditional charter operators who have owned and operated fleet are getting squeezed on so many sides. And Jesse, you were a owned and operated fleet operator, so this is not news to you. But I think that it's coming to a head, and I'm not 100% sure where it leads to. So that's why charter operators are my biggest loser. You have the cost of capital in charter is incredibly high. There are very, very few traditional lenders who are lending to these charter operator companies. So that's from one side, you have the capital issue from one side, which is stopping you from upgrading your fleet. On the other side, you have legacy platforms that are going defunct left and right. You have the Beechjet windshield issue. You have the Learjet landing gear issue. You have the G4 engine program. There's a lot of G4s that are kind of coming off engine programs. There's not a lot of slots. You're starting to get parts missing. You have Falcon 900s, which have no more screens for their avionics. You have all of these challenging things, and you have all these operators that have basically said, okay, we'll just go older and older and older. We're fine with older aircraft. We'll buy them up. We'll kind of, take them up under. And so you have this trend of your platform is eroding below you. But you don't have capital to actually be able to upgrade. And then you have kind of the pinch from the general market, because charter is the most cyclical, and it's not been great this year on a macro trend. And so you kind of have these three forces that are working against you as a charter operator that is, I think, going to squeeze out some of the older, smaller operators.
Yeah. So when I was operating an owned and operated fleet, our kind of key competitive point was, you can fly with us piecemeal as you want. You don't have to invest in some big fractional agreement. That was the piece of this that I think is good for the consumer. The problem is it's costing more and more and more to operate than it ever did. When I bought our first Phenom, when we sold that aircraft, 7 years later, it was worth more than what it was purchased for, even inflation adjusted, with thousands of hours on it. That's the world that we're living in terms of aircraft values, which have just gone bonkers. And that comes from OEMs deciding we're going to produce fewer, we're going to make more money on our airplanes. Makes sense for residual value. I get it, but squeezes the operator. On top of that, the cost of pilots, the cost of mechanics, if you can find them, either one of those, very difficult to source and staff them. It's just getting smaller and smaller and smaller as the baby boomers age out. And then on top of that, the cost of everything, OEMs not investing in inventory, not having availability for you, private equity coming in, buying up all these FBOs, raising fuel prices, raising rents. That's what they do when they get into the industry. It gets more expensive. So the squeeze is happening from all directions. And I feel like unless you can pass all that cost on to the consumer, like you can with fractional,
well, and
harder.
I think that the charter operators are not able to pass those costs on nearly as efficiently as the charter or as the fractional operators.
Exactly.
If you look in fractional contracts today, it was really interesting. One of my fun side hobbies is that I help people consult and pick a fractional program. And I basically read their contracts and I say, okay, here's what I like, here's what I don't like, all that kind of stuff. And one of my clients sent me their contract from it was like a pre-COVID contract that somehow they got extended, right? So it was like this really legacy contract, no fuel surcharge, guaranteed buyback out of the fractional contract. And it had a fixed escalation of cost. There was no dynamic cost adjustments because this was, mind you, before COVID when things were way more predictable. Mm-hmm. And so they were like, hey, I'm thinking about, I'm going to have to renew. And I was like, I'm sorry to tell you that your cost is going to double because of all these things that you had negotiated in your contract. And they're like, yeah, I figured. They're like, we had a good deal. So I think that I don't think that charter operators are able to be as nimble, and the charter customer, the high net worth charter customer is so price sensitive. Mm-hmm. And they have zero loyalty. And I think that that's a huge challenge for charter companies as well.
I think it's one or the other. It's either it costs what it costs, just book it, I don't care, or extremely disciplined in every single quote that comes in and judging every single piece of it and beating you on price. But yeah, it's tough to be in charter right now. It's definitely a more of a squeeze. But with bonus depreciation, maybe some more creativity in aftermarket parts and things, maybe it'll start to get better. But it's going to take a little bit.
Yeah, and it's funny, kind of a trend towards. My favorite is I want the cheapest possible, but what's their safety record? And I'm like, pick one.
The two don't go together.
Pick one. Really good safety record. Pay whatever it costs, right? A 10% increase is not going to kill you.
No.
But a bad safety record will. So there's a little pun for you. Well, let's get to our last section of the show. This is predictions for 2026. We're going to hit our crystal ball. Jesse and I are going to pick one piece of the industry that we predict will either continue, get better, get shooken up, all of that. Jesse, what is your 2026 prediction?
So we haven't talked about AI this whole show, which has been a huge trend of 2025 and 2024. So I'm using it for my prediction section. I think the speed at which software is being developed by AI, coded by AI, and all the other pieces, I think the software industry, and aviation software specifically, is going to have a big, big shakeup. It's way cheaper to make, produce, and ship software than it ever has been. It can be put in the hands of people who don't even know how to code. Charter companies could make their own systems pretty quickly using AI today, and I think that's only going to get better and better and better. So I see, all these people who are investing a lot of money in custom software and build outs. Be careful, because I think the world is really shifting under our feet more than we even understand.
Yeah, I completely agree. So I haven't talked about this on the show yet, but I have created a operator to consumer empty leg marketplace. And I know everybody's like, empty leg marketplace. And I agree. I think empty leg marketplaces historically have been kind of shammy, which is why I built one. Because I know a lot of operators, and basically the entire system was built based off of operator feedback and what would actually make a platform that works for you. And then from end consumers, I had 10 or 15 end consumers basically say, hey, this is terrible. It's a terrible experience. Mm-hmm. So we're not a broker. We're not actually in the transaction. We're completely a matchmaking service. It's more Tinder for empty legs than Uber. That's like the better way to compare it. That being said, we end up talking to technical teams at a lot of these operators. So we kind of have an insider view. And one thing that we're noticing is that everybody's hiring a head of technology, and that head of technology is usually not technical. Right. So they are either a marketer or a salesperson or kind of a growth hacker or an operations person. It's like one of those things. And they are basically either building their own software using AI, or they're force feeding, or they're basically like forcing whatever software they're using. So if it's Jet Insight or it's Flex or it's, whatever, right? There's a lot of softwares out there, and they're forcing it to obey their will with AI. And so I agree. I think that is going to continue. I think the softwares and the processes in which have the biggest moats are those which have regulatory capture. So those things that are required for maintenance tracking and things like that, you have to report to the FAA that you already have approval. That I think is safe. I think everything else below that probably gets almost all the way wiped out.
Well, I was consulting with someone the other day, and they were like, "Oh, we're going to hire this AI guy to like AI all of our stuff," and they're explaining to me what they're going to do, and I'm like, "Hold on a second, you're just trying to get like quoting done? Pull your entire employee handbook or your quoting handbook, stick it in a chat bot, and ask it questions. I guarantee you, like in 2 seconds, you don't have to spend $100,000 on this guy who's going to like build all this stuff for you. It's already there. Just upload it and see what it spits out and see if it works for you."
Yep. Yeah, exactly. I mean, we built our entire platform. I mean, there's two of us. It's my co-founder and I, and he is technical and used AI to build this entire program. And it literally can plug into anybody's system using anything. Like if you have a way that you list empty legs, we can go in and pull it automatically, hands off. But, it's so simple. And we've actually tried to like help these operators like, okay, here's like a tool that you can use that we've seen other operators using that's really going to help you optimize your fleet schedule or help you optimize, this and that. And I think that some of those tools will be useful in the short run, but eventually AI is going to disintermediate those. So I would say for operators, make your operations AI first, figure out how to do that. If you're going to make a $50,000 investment, make it to where you're being AI first instead of like rebuilding an entire custom product.
I also think part of my prediction here is that you will not be using software in days to come. All of your data will be uploaded. Prediction. And everyone who works for you will just be interacting with a bot or a chat feature, something that's way more human and human interactive than going in and plugging information into fields and things. Like I think AI is just going to do all of that for us eventually.
Yeah, that's cool. I like that idea. That's an interesting prediction.
Let's see if it happens.
That's cool. Yeah, no, looking to the future. All right, I'm going to continue my theme for my prediction. I have had the theme kind of throughout the entire show, and it's just something that I've been thinking about because it's the world in which I live in, which is kind of finance markets. So I'm going to make one more kind of finance prediction. My prediction is that the middle market in business aviation in 2026 is going to get eroded away. And here's what I mean. I think that the big guys are going to buy the high quality, medium size companies. And I think that the low quality, medium sized companies are going to struggle and become kind of smaller companies. Here's the reason. There's the silver tsunami. I think there's been a general consensus that the silver tsunami was probably falsely led on. And there is actually transition plans for these people who own businesses. And I think that the silver tsunami, I think we're probably still in the middle of it, especially in business aviation. If you look at kind of operator leadership and you look at charter leadership, you look at aircraft sales sales group management, we're still about halfway through that silver wave. But I think that the medium-sized firms that are really good either get bought up or they grow and they have a pretty solid growth trajectory to become one of the big players. And I think that the bad medium-sized players kind of get left into obfuscation because we are becoming such a scale matters industry, and you have to have buying power You have to have all of these things to make your models make sense, because the cost of aircraft are going up, the cost of fuel is going up, the cost of pilots and the cost of training are going up. You have to achieve scale in order to really make money in this business.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that the high quality, medium sized firms, I think 26 becomes a ripe year for M&A. I think that there's a lot of transactions that I've heard about kind of, percolating in the background. And I think it's a blowout year for M&A in 2026. And I think interest rates probably come down this year, which means speculative capital comes in and is seeking yield. So therefore private aviation becomes more attractive.
Mm-hmm.
I think the cost of debt goes down, and so therefore scaling becomes easier. I think that we have the recipe for like a breakout, bang out M&A season in front of us kind of coming together. So that's my prediction for 26.
Yeah. I mean, I don't wish for a recession, but I wish for some pricing relief. Maybe that could be gradual and smooth. I think that's, that would help a lot. But again, I don't want to like put even that bad juju out there, like knock on wood here. But yeah, I mean, we'll have to see. I think there's a lot of companies that have been sitting by with a lot of cash trying to get the returns that they enjoyed right after COVID. So the money is there. It's just a matter of getting the right model and finding a really niche, interesting play. If you're small, I think that's the only way that you're going to actually be able to attract investment and growth, is just to come up with something that's really unique and special and allows you to get that extra margin, because you're going to need it right now.
No, I completely agree. Well, this has been a great end of year episode, Jesse, with you. It's been a lot of fun. I have had a great time. Thank you again for inviting me to be the permanent co-host on season 2
You're the best
of the
co-host.
VIP seat, which is a lot of fun. And I am really looking forward to next year. I think one thing, if I had to ask one thing of the audience, is we need your help understanding what we should be doing for next year on the show. So we want to hear your feedback. We want to hear what you like, what you don't like, what your predictions for 2026 will be for the VIP seat, which would be super fun and exciting. Send us a message, leave us a LinkedIn comment, LinkedIn DM, Twitter, carrier pigeon, email, however you want to reach us. We want to hear from you because we love hearing from readers. So send us a message. Let us know what you want to hear more of in 2026, what you want to hear less of in 2026. And we are looking forward to another great season. So the next episode that you hear will be season 3, episode 1 of the VIP seat. Thanks again to RealJet for sponsoring. Go to thevipseat.com to sign up for the newsletter. Like, subscribe, share, send it to a couple of friends. Happy 2025, everybody. We will see you guys next year.